Cities under siege. Insurgents running rampant in Iraq. And now top government leaders meet at the White House to try to find a solution. The Pope will soon go to Korea. We break down his plans for the trip. Pressure is mounting for the Washington Redskins to change the team name, the ruling today that could be the turning point. And two friends who wouldn't let hate triumph over love. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, June 18th, 2014. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick, and as we begin with your news now, here in Washington, the president and congressional leaders are weighing their options tonight. With reports of new attacks in Iraq, the big question is, should the U.S. send combat troops to fight the insurgents? That's one of the topics being discussed in the Oval Office. Our Wyatt Goolsby is at the White House tonight with details. Wyatt?
Brian, at this point, White House officials say multiple options are still on the table, but aides to President Obama say that at this point he's not likely to approve of airstrikes, but is considering sending in special forces to Iraq. The president talked about those options this afternoon with both Republican and Democratic leaders. From the House, Nancy Pelosi and Speaker John Boehner, and from the Senate, Harry Reid and Mitch McConnell. Some lawmakers are urging the president to get involved fast to send a message to the terrorists. Many Iraqi soldiers have been abandoning their post as insurgents with al-Qaeda links have seized multiple cities in northern Iraq. One idea being talked about is providing Iraqis with intelligence and training, something their government will need in the fight, but Obama has ruled out sending U.S. combat troops to Iraq.
But again, taking direct military action by the United States will not solve Iraq's challenges.
Earlier today, House Speaker John Boehner said he disagreed with the Obama administration on the role of Iran in this crisis. Secretary of State John Kerry says the U.S. is open to talking to Iran about helping the Iraqi government. But Speaker Boehner says that's a bad idea as Iran continues to support other terrorists in the region. A few additional 100 troops are on their way in non-combat roles to protect U.S. facilities in Iraq, but President Obama has made it clear that a military solution cannot be the sole solution. He also says there has to be a political one as well, and he's leaving that to the Iraqi government. In addition, the president has been talking about other top foreign policy issues today, including Ukraine as well as Iran's nuclear talks. So certainly Iraq has been one issue, Brian, but there's no doubt it's been the biggest issue today.
All right, Wyatt Goolsby at the White House tonight, and 40 Indian citizens working for a Turkish construction company near Mosul in Iraq have been kidnapped. The Indian government says there's been no contact with the kidnappers. Distraught relatives say they just want their loved ones home safe. India sent a senior diplomat to Baghdad today. A call center was opened for worried families. This past week, militants have overrun Mosul and seized wide swaths of territory as they storm toward Baghdad. Today, Iraqi security forces fought for control of an oil refinery targeted by the insurgents. Now, some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. American Special Forces got their man, capturing the suspected mastermind of the 2012 consulate attack in Benghazi. But there is controversy over what to do with Ahmed Abu Hatala now that he's in U.S. custody. The Libyan government wants to try him in their country, but President Obama says the suspected terrorist should face American justice. Meanwhile, the president is dealing with criticism at home. Some Republicans say Hatala should be sent to Guantanamo Bay instead of facing an American criminal trial. Cully Stimson joining us from the Heritage Foundation. Thanks for being with us to talk about this situation, Cully.
Thanks for having me.
All right, as we just mentioned, a lot of people say that these are prisoners of war and not criminals, including Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell.
There has been a tendency in this administration, as you know, to treat this like a law enforcement matter. Read them their rights and get them a lawyer. I hope they're not doing that.
Cully, how do you think that our government should treat people like this?
Well, not all terrorists are the same. And as a legal matter, you have to look at who the person is, who they're associated with, if anybody, if any terrorist association, and then whether that fits squarely within the authorization for use of military force, which would allow him to be detained as a law war detainee at Gitmo or somewhere else. And if he doesn't fit that, then he has to go somewhere else. And the other place would be federal district court. And that's clearly what the administration has decided for this guy.
Well, they say he killed Ambassador Stevens, so he's obviously going to be on trial for that killing. But this is more of a war or terrorist situation. It happened on 9/11 two years ago. So doesn't all the evidence point to more of a criminal, prisoner of war versus a criminal trial?
You would think so, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
This is a murder case that took place thousands of miles away by an individual who's associated with Ansar al-Sharia, which does not fall under the authorization for use of military force. So by definition, this guy, as much as people want him to go to Gitmo, he's not eligible for a military commission's trial at Gitmo, and he's not eligible to be held as a law-war detainee at Gitmo. So the only real option is federal district court, like it or not.
Do you think he could get a fair trial here, and does he deserve one?
I think he can. I know he will. The judges here in the D.C. circuit are very good. I used to practice here as a federal prosecutor. And I'm sure the defense attorneys will be given lots of opportunity to pick the kind of jury they want, and the government will try to pick the kind of jury they want, and he'll get a fair trial.
So apparently reporters were able to find this guy. Why do you think it took so long for the government to make its move, whether they knew where he was, but the capture?
Yeah, that's the $100,000 question, and that's the question the administration has yet to answer. I mean, I'm very confident as a military officer who served for 22 years that there were military options on the table, and I've read that the military options were on the table shortly after the attack in 2012. So why it took so long for the administration to push the green button and for the president to say go is a question the administration will have to answer, at least to members of Congress behind closed doors, if not to the American people.
All right, we look forward to that. Cully Stimson, thanks for joining us from the Heritage Foundation.
Thanks for having me.
Well, cooler heads could prevail after months of fighting in Ukraine. The new president of that country has offered a ceasefire. That means his troops would no longer take aim at pro-Russian separatists on the country's eastern border. The goal is to allow fighters to leave and Russian President Vladimir Putin to say he fulfilled his goal of protecting Russian-speaking people in the Ukraine. Russia's foreign minister welcomes the idea, but he says he hopes it's not just a ruse. Now to Nigeria, where a celebration for World Cup fans watching the games took a tragic turn. A suicide bomber blew up a taxi near a viewing party. 14 people died, 26 were wounded. Local hospitals treated survivors today. No terrorist group has claimed responsibility for that attack. Pope Francis began a new series of teachings about the church and its identity today at his general audience. St. Peter's Square was packed as usual. In his remarks, the Pope said even though members of the church stray over and over again, God has patience with us. He continues to form his people, just like a father forms his own children. The Pope is gearing up for a trip to South Korea in August. The Vatican has just released details of the trip. Our Rome correspondent Alan Holdren has the Holy Father's itinerary. Alan, how long will the Pope be in Korea?
He'll be there for 5 days, spending most of his time in the capital city of Seoul. It's there in the city's cathedral that he'll be celebrating a mass for peace and reconciliation. This in a place that's been divided since World War II into North and South Korea. He's also going to be visiting over the course of the week disabled people, Catholic leaders, both from Korea and the rest of Asia, and also other religious leaders. He'll be beatifying 124 Korean martyrs. But those aren't the main reasons for his visit. He's going to take part in Asian Youth Day. This is an event where he's going to be seeing youth from all over Asia, not just Korea, and locals in Korea are very excited about it.
But it means the young people, they demonstrated their faith in Korea, so other non-Catholic young people also they will see how the Catholics, young Catholics, they behave. And it's another good evangelization.
So this is the Pope's third international trip and his first to Asia. It looks like it's going to be an eventful one, Brian.
All right, our Alan Holdren in Rome tonight. General Motors CEO Mary Barra answered tough questions again today on Capitol Hill. She was asked about the small number of cars that have been repaired compared with the number that were recalled.
Actually, we've produced and shipped over 400,000 parts. The challenge is getting the customer to come in and get the vehicle repaired, and that's why we've employed a lot of innovative ways to do that, and that's why the dealers are reaching out.
Barra also addressed the compensation program for victims who were injured. She said professional compensation administrators will have full independence in the matter. EWTN is filing an immediate appeal after a federal district judge ruled against the network in its case against the Health and Human Services contraception mandate. Our network CEO, Michael Warsaw, commented in a statement, "The fact that the court has dismissed the serious issues of conscience and religious freedom that EWTN has raised is very troubling. Lawyers for the network are asking an appeals court for an injunction blocking enforcement of the mandate. The next step would be seeking emergency relief from the U.S. Supreme Court. Based on an earlier Supreme Court decision for the Little Sisters of the Poor, attorneys are confident relief will be granted."
I think when the lower courts look up and see that the Supreme Court dealt with this issue already and said that there was no need to force somebody to sign the form. Look, I mean, ultimately, our federal government is big and powerful and can get contraceptives to people in lots of different ways. There's really no need to take over Mother Angelica's EWTN to get contraceptives to people.
Meanwhile, we're closely watching the High Court, waiting for a ruling in the HHS case involving Hobby Lobby and Conestoga Wood. It could come any day. Of course, we will have it covered for you. Spain has just crowned its new king. Earlier today at the Royal Palace in Madrid, King Juan Carlos signed the law allowing for his abdication. Afterward, he embraced his son Felipe, who will be taking over as king. The whole family was there, Juan Carlos's wife, Queen Sofia, and their grandchildren. Juan Carlos announced his surprise decision earlier this month, saying younger royal blood was needed to rally the country. Spain is still trying to work through a recession with high unemployment. And Britain's Duchess of Cambridge tried her hand at code breaking today. She opened a museum at Bletchley Park. That's Britain's famous center used to break German codes during World War II. The Duchess has a family link to this place. Her grandmother was a civilian staff member there during the war. Kate spoke with elderly veterans and former employees, including an ex-colleague of her grandmother.
They couldn't talk to each other about what they did. Obviously, women that worked together, like Lady Marion Body and Kate's grandmother and her great aunt, could talk about the work they were doing when they were in work. They couldn't talk about it when they were out of work.
Code breakers at Bletchley Park helped end the war by breaking complex German codes. The site fell into disrepair, but's been restored after a year-long project. Coming up, a community of understanding, helping people with disabilities know their lives are worth living. And certain people could be on the fast track to asylum in the U.S. Who's on the administration's priority list and why? It's the 18th of June. Thank you for joining us on this Wednesday evening. I'm Brian Patrick with our EWTN News Nightly team. All human life is beautiful, and for 50 years, one community has been living that in a very special way. Jason Calvi visited a group praised by St. John Paul II for their acceptance and respect of all people.
A regular morning, oatmeal, and the morning newspaper. But look a little closer, and you'll see what makes L'Arche unique.
We dance, we play, we go out together.
It's not just a hand to hold. All of these people also live together.
Our mission is shared life. That's the point. It's shared life as children of God.
So Sarah Roskowski and the other assistants share daily life with those with intellectual disabilities.
Thank you. We encourage each other to see the sacred in the daily, to see every moment that you get to be with another person as a moment that you get to see God and to see God's love.
Prayer and faith is an important part of what happens in each L'Arche community. After dinner, the community gets together at this dinner table, passes around this candle, and shares their prayer intentions.
A Catholic founded the first L'Arche community in France 50 years ago. Pope John Paul II honored Jean Vanier, calling him a spokesman for the civilization of love. He's still alive and celebrating this anniversary. L'Arche has grown to 146 communities worldwide, including here in D.C. For Sarah, it's the perfect fit.
I love people a lot and intensely, and L'Arche is a place where I'm free to do that.
Many of these residents go off to work or senior centers during the day.
Eileen, have a good day.
Eileen sells her art. She's raised enough money to make a trip to London with Sarah.
What do you like about drawing that?
Because I can be an artist.
There's a lot of life lessons learned at L'Arche.
What do you know you teach me?
How to behave.
And Sarah has learned other things living here the last 3 years.
You are enough, exactly as you are.
Jason Calvi, EWTN News Nightly.
right?
The late Father Henry Nouwen wrote a great deal about the L'Arche community. He actually lived in the L'Arche community in Canada. Very good reading. Well, the continent of Africa holds its first ever pro-life conference hosted by bishops earlier this month. Hundreds marched through the streets of Abuja in support of pro-life values. More than 1,000 Nigerians attended and heard speakers from across the Western world, including U.S. Representative Chris Smith. Today, the conference organizers released a declaration of pro-life principles. 2 secular newspapers in Nigeria have agreed to publish that unabridged. If you're seeking asylum in the U.S., it helps to be gay. The front page headline for a Wall Street Journal story this week, the Journal reports that the United States has started to favor the cases of sexual minorities seeking asylum. Joel Millman, a veteran correspondent for the Wall Street Journal, reported on this story. He's joining us from Portland. And Joel, in your story, you talk about a certain group of asylum seekers, with help from an agency in New York City, getting about a 98% success rate in finding asylum. Is it right that that's like 4 times what the normal asylum seeker would find?
Well, it's a fair statistic, but you know, this agency does very thorough vetting of the people that they want to sponsor for asylum. So their success rate has a lot to do with just how solid some of these persecution claims are in some of the countries that the individuals that they represent are coming from. Their success rate is good because they attract pretty strong cases of abuse and asylum seeking. So it's true that the propensity is greater on their end than the average seeker, but it doesn't mean that that would be true of everybody in that social group who would go outside this agency. This is a pro bono legal organization that does work specifically in this area, and they work very hard to make sure their cases are cases deserving of asylum.
You use the word persecution. Is there truly persecution against these individuals, or is it just seen as inequality or perhaps discrimination?
Well, both things. You know, Honduras and other countries in the region are so violent, and the breakdown of authority is so pervasive that if there is persecution, it is systematic and it's continuous. I mean, we heard when we were down in San Pedro Sula, Honduras, the thing called the No Mas Maricas campaign, which is Spanish for a pejorative of, you know, no more homosexuals. And this was the kind of thing that was scribbled on as graffiti places, and also occasionally texted to the cell phones of people of this type of gender identity, threatening to kill them, and in some cases attacking them on sight. So I think it's fair to say there is real persecution.
Well, there are people who've been waiting for years for asylum based on religious persecution, and many of them have been violently attacked. Is it fair to fast-track this one group and not the others?
Well, I'm not sure that they are being fast-tracked. I mean, lots of people do what they do. I've met religious dissidents who attempt asylum almost on the same manner that these LGBTs do. I think a lot of them do similar things, which is to present themselves at the U.S.-Mexico border, agree to go into detention for several months or sometimes several days if they're luckier, and then go through the process. Fast track's kind of situational. There are cases where there are people in the U.S. already. Maybe they came on a student visa or a tourist visa. Then with the help of someone like Immigration Equality, they might go to have their asylum interview with an asylum officer, and he may grant it on the spot. That could be construed as a fast track, but these were people that were already legally in the U.S. on other visas. I'm not really sure that it's always apples to apples when you compare with other groups. But yes, I mean, the asylum waiting period can be extraordinarily long, but it's not my feeling that the LGBT community takes advantage or gets special treatment. It's just more that there is a dedicated community in the United States now that is, much as there have been with human rights cases in years past, that it really is mobilized to help them move quickly through the asylum system.
All right, Joel Millman with the Wall Street Journal. We appreciate you joining us tonight.
Okay, Brian, thank you.
Up next, is the name of D.C.'s NFL team offensive? Another attempt to get rid of the Redskins. And a touching personal story of friendship from what history now calls the Summer of Freedom. It's good to have you with us for EWTN News Nightly. I'm Brian Patrick, and you could say the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office called a blitz today on the Washington Redskins canceling the NFL team's trademark. Today's action comes amidst ongoing complaints that the Redskins' name is offensive to some Native Americans. This decision won't force a name change. The trademarks will stay in place for now, pending an appeal. But if that appeal fails, others could use the team's name and logo without penalty. It could result in even wider exposure of an image and name that offends many Native Americans. We're 6 days into the World Cup, and soccer fans from all over the world have flocked to Brazil to catch the action. Dutch and Australian fans arrived by the thousands in Porto Alegre ahead of the match between their countries. Fans dressed in all sorts of crazy get-ups today. One Australian even brought with him a huge inflatable kangaroo. Well, it was all very friendly, with many posing for pictures with fans from the other team. And did you know the Vatican has a department that promotes sports? An official from that office told EWTN News Nightly why that is.
Sports and soccer, as part of the sports, is a school for life. It has a lot of virtues and values which are of enormous help for our Christian life.
Monsignor Sanchez is originally from Spain. He encourages the presence of the church in the world of sports. Well, it won't compare in scope or numbers to January's March for Life, but tomorrow's March for Marriage on the National Mall here in D.C. is expected to draw more than 10,000. That's how many came last year. Organizers say the march sends a clear message that a majority of Americans still stand for traditional marriage, the union of one man and one woman. You'll see full coverage on EWTN with a complete wrap-up of the day's events here on EWTN News Nightly. Some of us lived through a chapter of history we're remembering this week. I was a 9-year-old boy during what is now called Freedom Summer.
200,000 Negroes and whites marched on Washington.
The Civil Rights March sparked a nation more than 5 decades ago.
American Negroes demanded freedom, and now...
and inspired a young woman from Chicago to travel to the segregated South on a mission.
Help people to end segregation, end discrimination, be part of a group that was doing the right thing.
Aviva Futorian was one of several young activists who came to Mississippi during the summer of 1964 to teach young black students at places they called freedom schools. Roy DeBerry was one of those students.
I was very impressed. He was extremely lively and extremely sharp. And every question I asked, Roy was the only one who knew the answers, and he knew all the answers. There's me.
They soon became friends.
She encouraged us to read and explore and to question. I just had a great deal of respect for her. She was also a good-looking woman as well.
Today, few would question their friendship, but not in Mississippi in the 60s, where the owner closed this movie theater to avoid desegregating it. In those days, driving here with Futorian to get to a college prep class also was risky.
It was the first time I had interacted with a white person on a social level.
Futorian eventually returned to Chicago to practice law. DeBerry got a degree from Brandeis University in Massachusetts, Futorian's alma mater, and returned home to pick up where the activists left off. But the pair kept in touch.
We've both sort of been amazed by it because we come from such different backgrounds.
And the friendship endured.
This relationship now in 2014 for me is just as real, is just as interesting, is just as enriching, and it's just as powerful and sweet as it was in 1964.
A personal connection that helped change the world 50 years ago. What a beautiful story, and there are many more like it that are being told from that summer 50 years ago, and we'll share more of them with you in the weeks ahead. Don't forget, we're now on every weeknight, so we hope you'll join us tomorrow night. Until then, you can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and watch again anytime you like on EWTN's YouTube page. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, I'm Brian Patrick. Thank you for watching tonight. Good night, and God bless you.